Ms. Latham, we're ready.
Thank you, Ms. Pappas. This is the meeting for the Mobile City Planning Commission for Thursday, August 20th, 2020. General procedures for this remote meeting are as follows. I will announce an application. For items where no one from the public is attending, staff will give an overview, including any comments received from the public. If a member of the public will attend the meeting, staff will announce their attendance and admit them at this time. Once the parties have joined the meeting, I will state that the commission's rules regarding the number of speakers as well as speaking time. Each application is limited to a maximum of 4 speakers in support and 4 people in opposition, limited to 5 minutes each. I will then announce the beginning of the public hearing. The applicant will present their case and up to 3 additional speakers if applicable. For each speaker at the end of their presentation, I'll ask if there are any questions from the commission members. Once the commission concludes their questions of the speakers in support of an application, I will then call for interested parties to speak. At the end of each speaker's presentation, I will again ask if there are any questions from the commission. The applicant will be given an opportunity to rebut in accordance with commission rules. 2 minutes are allowed. After the rebuttal, I will declare the public hearing closed and the commission will go into deliberation session. After the commission has rendered a decision, the applicant and concerned parties will leave the meeting or will be sent back to the waiting room by the meeting host where they can disconnect. I will then call the next agenda item. Commission members and staff, please remember to keep your microphone on mute unless you are speaking to the meeting attendees. I'm going to call roll first. Curt Blackwell.
Here.
Shirley Sessions.
Here.
Alan Cameron.
Here.
Taylor Atchison.
Here.
Matt Anderson.
Here.
Nick Amberger.
Here.
Bess Rich.
Here.
Jay Stubbs.
Here.
And I'm Libba Latham. All right, Ms. Pappas, we will start with agenda. I'm sorry. I will need a motion for adoption of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor of adopting the agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Number 116 Myrtlewood Lane. That application has been recommended for tentative approval.
That's correct. And I have admitted Brett Orell. He is available to answer any questions of the commission. And I believe he is in agreement with staff recommendations.
Margaret, may I speak, please?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I just popped in and on. We have had an opportunity to review. I know we sent some revisions and had held this over for one meeting to put together some additional information in regards to Myrtlewood in particular, and trying to look at the area and some of the historical analysis of the house that was there. I think that it's stated in here there was a demo permit pulled in March of this year. And that home, we tried to illustrate where that was physically located. There was also a garage that's noted in the report. I believe that may have been removed since then as well. So the property was developed at one time, and really what we were wanting to do or asking for is that items 1 and 4 in particular in regards to dedication and setback along Myrtlewood. Those are the only things that we really had any issue with. And so Mr. Sheridan and I discussed this at length again today, and based on, what we were seeing, we were still asking the commission for a waiver of that setback, or excuse me, the dedication of right-of-way, along with trying to adhere to the previous location of the original home. And so we illustrated that, and I'm hoping that was an attachment that was provided to the Planning Commission to show that location. It currently was set roughly about 37 feet from the center line of Myrtlewood, like I said, as of March of this year. And so what I illustrated there is that with no dedication and a 20-foot setback along Myrtlewood, that would allow the future homes here to be in that same historical location. Lot 2A on the south end, he plans to build a home facing the unnamed drive. And on Lot 1A, the plan is to build a home along facing Myrtlewood. We would be okay with 1A shifting to a 25-foot setback, but we were hoping to adhere to a 20-foot side setback on Lot 2A. So, you know, we were just asking the commission to consider amending items number 1 and 4, but we were agreeable to all other items.
Okay, any of the commissioners have any questions? Margaret, do y'all have any comments?
Yes, a few. One, Myrtlewood is a substandard right-of-way, and there are substandard right-of-ways in this area. The standard for the 50-foot right-of-way is not just for pavement, curb and gutter, it's also for utilities, drainage, sidewalks, all of the infrastructure that needs to be contained within the right-of-way. There was, I believe, referenced in the report, a subdivision of this property here to the south, and dedication was required along Myrtlewood. In regards to this property here, you know, the home that was existing has been demolished. It is the intent of non-conforming that the non-conformities go away over time rather than to further subdivide the property and create 2 new structures that do not comply with setbacks. It's a little unusual to have a property. I believe that right-of-way here is unnamed, and I don't believe it's open. It's unusual to have a structure face an unopened right-of-way. It's technically permissible, but it is a little unusual. So
I believe it's it's not open with a public street, but I believe there's a driveway there that serves the house back behind there.
gotcha.
That's correct. I did look at that. So it is a driveway to the house on the big lot.
And Margaret, I do have a question for Brett. Is the right of way currently at the edge of the existing asphalt? I mean, we can't tell it from these drawings, but with whatever surveying he's done, is there basically effectively, you know, the edge of the pavement is the right of way, so that there is no effective green space along the road there? I mean, kind of depicted.
I would like to be able to answer that specific. We did shoot the center line of the road as part of the survey, but the edge of the road we did not. However, I was going to try to go to Street View and just see. I know that there was an existing fence at the time of the survey, and I'm trying to see if I can get to that to answer that question. But I know that from the center line to the present monumented right of way, it was, you know, not much. It was maybe 17 feet or so. It wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot of, I think there is a little bit of green space, but not a whole lot, to answer your question, Nick. I believe it's minor, you know, maybe 5 feet, you know, just kind of looking at the street view through there. I don't think it would be much.
That's what I would have thought, that there's a little strip, but there's not much. Now I will tell you,
There's not a lot.
because this is just a general observation for the rest of the commission. I drive that intersection every day, twice a day, and there's a lot of school traffic that navigates through that little stretch of real estate right there. I don't know that there would be a widening project. The city would ever take one. We resurfaced those streets in recent years, and so they're in good shape. I don't know that we would take on a widening project ever, but it's tight through there, and there's a lot of vehicular traffic, especially when school's in.
If I may weigh in, this is Bert Hoffman. If Margaret, you could go back to the line drawing. North of the Stein Avenue intersection, there are also several subdivisions that from 1980 moving forward to 1995, the Planning Commission has consistently required right-of-way dedication. So not only has it been required for the subdivision directly across Myrtlewood for the property, but also further north of it.
Okay. Are there any further, anybody else have any comments or questions?
Just again, just another observation. The setbacks. The setbacks there. I know in another little subdivision up the street, we've got very, very reduced setbacks, and some of the houses in and along there are very, very close to the right of way, and sometimes it's an optical illusion of where the right of way is versus where the setback lines are. With my familiarity with that area there, probably better off to have the dedication, but then even a lesser setback probably wouldn't be out of line for the way some of the houses are there. Some of the houses are very, very close to the road, as they are. It's not a West Mobile subdivision where you've got all the standard, more modern subdivision setbacks and right-of-way widths. You've got some odd stuff in there. So I wouldn't be objectionable to something like that, where the setbacks along Myrtlewood were maybe even less, and then even that setback along that unnamed driveway be less also. That just seems to be how the existing structures are in that general area.
Okay.
But I do think the dedication is appropriate to try to keep cleaning those strips up along there.
Are there any further questions from commissioners or staff? Ms.
The
Pepper?
one,
Yes.
the one comment I wanted to make, and following up on what Nick was saying, if the commission is looking for reduced setbacks, we would need to alter the wording on condition number 4, similar to what we have proposed on one of the other applications, whereby the final plat would not be recorded until a variance is approved by the Board of Zoning Adjustment.
Okay. All right. Ms. Pappas, are there any other speakers on this
No, ma'am.
topic?
No, ma'am.
And no one speaking in opposition to it?
No, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Orrell.
Can I respond? We normally
Yes,
get.
you can have a
a chance
rebuttal.
for-
I'm sorry. I'm
No,
still
it wasn't
getting used to
just. No, I just, I would say, Mr. Sheridan wasn't able to be here at my office today for the meeting, but, I believe if there's some compromise there on the setback reduction, I don't think dedication would be out of line. I think we're just trying to preserve the historical integrity of what was there before, and allow, because I believe that the majority of these driveways, just to give you an idea, or the 2 driveways for the 2 residences, one would be coming off, the unnamed road. And so the other, by having that presence closer to the road, leaves for more footprint, more of the things that would aesthetically look good there. So I think, just to respond to the dedication, if we wouldn't be opposed to dedication if we can keep the setback at a reduced rate, similar or very close to the location that we proposed. And if 20 foot along the unnamed drive is allowable, which it was in the original report. I believe that staff recommended 20 feet. I just changed that. It's just a different look at it. So we're just trying to look for a more, a little bit larger footprint with giving up any additional right of way.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Arell. Any
Thank
further
y'all.
questions? All right. That takes us to number 2.
Madam Chairman, shall we go ahead and go into deliberation on this?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I still haven't quite gotten the hang of this. Okay. We're going to talk about number 1. Do I have a motion from anybody? Or any questions or comments?
I'd like to make a motion to approve subject to staff recommendations and with revisions to items number 1 and number 4.
Second.
And those I'm sorry, Mr. Amberger, the revisions?
Number 1 and number 4, for the applicant to basically work with the staff to sort out what the setbacks and the dedication would be, but to require dedication to work to get to to reproduce what the original setback of the existing structure was.
Hey, Nick, could I make a suggestion? Okay, I believe you want to keep number 1 because we want the dedication from the center line, 25 feet from the center line of Myrtlewood.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, and then number 4, revision of the final plat to illustrate setbacks along all streets as approved by the Board of Zoning Adjustment.
Yeah, that was, I'm good with that.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Now we'll move on to number 2, which is 916 Church Street.
I need to recuse on this one, Lila.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Atchison is recused on that one. Ms. Pappas, do y'all have any comments on this? 916 Church Street.
You're muted, Margaret.
That's the best way for me to be heard. I have admitted David Schumer.
Recused on that one. Ms. Pappas,
Yes.
do y'all have any comments on this?
Sounds like it has a little bit of a delay.
Hey, David.
I'm here.
Yes,
Can you hear
you're
me?
going to need to mute the live stream on your computer.
Oh, is that what's going on? There we go. Thank you.
Okay, David, you can hear us. We can hear you. Ms. Latham, I think we're good to go.
Okay. The recommendation from the staff was that either the proposed PUD be denied or that we request the applicant withdraw and resubmit when the development, the concerns regarding the development are addressed.
Yeah, we had some unforeseen delays, health issues, and personal issues that kind of helped delay our response, and we were hoping for a holdover for the October 1 meeting if staff would be so inclined to allow it.
Okay.
Ms. Latham, this will be the first holdover that that the applicant has requested. So that would be in line with the commission's policy on holdovers. Also, I do need to draw attention to the commission of the concern uploaded into the portal by Ms. Teresa Tessner. Y'all have a copy of that. And then I think about 15 minutes before the meeting began, Bert started receiving a lot of emails with concerns on this application. So given the applicant's need for a holdover and all of the recent correspondence, staff would be more than agreeable to a holdover to the October 1st meeting.
All right. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments on that holdover request? Well, then I will make the motion that we hold it over to October 1st.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion will be held over and put on the October 1st agenda. Thank you. We're ready to move to number 3. I am recused on number 3. Mr. Amberger is gonna take over for me at this point, and then I'll pick back up with number 4.
Actually, I asked Mr. Anderson to,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I did not let you know that. I apologize. I had to, Mr. Amberger wasn't able to get him.
Okay. So Mr. Anderson is going to take over for me. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
It would help.
Mr. Anderson, I'm admitting William Latta to the meeting.
Great. Is he in?
William, are you in?
Yes, I'm in.
Okay, good. Number 3, we've got 4350 and 4362 Government Boulevard subdivision and a rezoning. Subdivision creating 2 lots, and the rezoning is R1 to B2. William, did you have any concerns or comments regarding the staff recommendation?
William, you're muted.
We're in agreement with the staff recommendations.
Okay, great. So do any of the commission members have questions for Mr. Latta? All right, hearing none, the public hearing portion is closed. We can enter into deliberations now. If anyone has any comments, I think we've gone over this one substantially, but if anybody has any ideas, we can go over it again. So we can take those separately. I would entertain a motion for the subdivision.
I make a motion based on, I make a motion to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Also entertain a motion for the rezoning from R1 to B2.
Move to approve subject to staff recommendation, recommending findings of facts 1, 2, and 3.
Second.
Just
We have a
finding a
motion.
fact 1.
Oh, say again, Margaret?
There's just one finding of fact, and it's error. You're on page 5 of the recommendations agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which ones did Nick say?
I was trying to adopt the conditions. I was looking at the condition finding.
Yeah.
So just move to approve subject to staff recommendation.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and it is seconded. Are there any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I believe the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I'm
Happy
going to
help.
call number 4, which is 450 San Emmanuel Street. The recommendation is that the 1-year extension requested be granted. Ms. Pappas, is anyone attending to comment on this?
Lee Rambo with Jade Engineers. I've admitted them into the meeting. They're available for questions.
Are there any questions by the commission or the commissioners? No? Then we'll close. Is there anybody here to speak in opposition to this?
No,
Well,
ma'am.
actually, hold on just one moment. I had a couple of conversations with staff on number 4, and I think it would be good if we could discuss this one. I think I might have spoken about it with Bert. I do need to talk with Shayla about this, Margaret. So if we could put this off till the next meeting, that would actually be useful, because I've spoken with the mayor and with Paul about this. There might be some extenuating factors that we've got to take into consideration that we just became aware of.
On number 4?
Yes.
Ms. Pappas, does the city have any comment about that?
I do not. However, I want to make sure the applicant is in the meeting. Lee Rambo, are you in the meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. At this point, it appears that the application may be considered for holdover.
Okay. Is there someone we need to reach out to? I guess I saw Mr. Anderson had some comments. Do we need to reach out to, I guess, try and discuss these comments and what
Yeah,
they need?
Lee, what we're likely to do is Paul and the mayor and I will probably coordinate with Glenn Hodge as we kind of navigate this. Not even really, honestly, not even really sure what all is being contemplated in his mind, but I think from the city's perspective, we just need a little bit more time to think through a couple things.
Okay, because this is just an extension of a prior approval. So with this, we're not asking for any revisions for what been previously approved. But we'll,
Yeah.
I mean, if staff needs it to be held over, I guess we'll be agreeable with that.
Thank you.
This is Doug Anderson. One of the things that they're having to do here is vacate St. Emmanuel. That application for vacation was recently submitted and reviewed by city legal departments, going through the channels now. So that's part of what they're trying to do here.
Yeah, and Doug, the contemplation of that vacation is, I think, part of the equation regarding the.
Okay.
Regarding
Yeah, okay. I reviewed it just for the legalities of the petition, but I'll leave everything else up to y'all.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Was that the county making the application for the vacation of St.
Yes.
Emmanuel?
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
okay, thanks. Thought so.
All right, so are there further questions? Does anyone have any questions or comments for either Mr. Rambo or Mr. Anderson, I guess? Ms. Pappas, in this circumstance, we would put it over till our next meeting and then review the 1-year extension?
Yes, ma'am.
When is their deadline for their 1 year?
I think since they have made application, and it's now in the commission's court, it can be extended at the commission's next meeting if the extension is in fact granted.
Okay. And what is the date of our next meeting? I'm sorry, I don't have that information.
I would just put it to our next meeting. It's in September.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from any of the commissioners? Then I will move that we hold it over until our next meeting and take up the 1-year extension at that point in time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rambo, for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we'll move to number 5, the east terminus of Layton Place. The staff has recommended that the request for a 1-year extension be approved. It is unlikely, if any further extensions are requested, that they will be granted. And if you need an extension for the PUD is needed, permits are not at the, Ms. Pappas, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, there was also a PUD associated with this application, and it needs to be extended as well. So that's just a heads up to the applicant that if they are unable to secure their permits by September 5th, they need to go ahead and file their PUD.
Okay.
Again, a PUD extension. And again, it's just filing. We have contacted both the applicant and the developer and didn't receive any feedback with any concerns regarding the staff's recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments? And there's nobody online that wants to speak to this?
That is correct.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion for the extension.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion for an extension is granted for 1 year. Thank you. Number 6, 957 Selma Street. This application has been recommended for tentative approval.
I've admitted Corey Bronenkamp, who's available to answer questions if the commission has any.
Thank you. Does the city staff have any comments to make on any of this?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bronenkamp, do you want to speak or are you just available for questions? Okay. Mr. Bronenkamp, do you want to speak?
I'm sorry, my audio just kicked on.
Okay, good. What I want to know is if you want to make any comments.
Oh, that's okay. Just looking to subdivide it to legal lot of record, and I'm here for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any of the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Bronenkamp? Okay, is there anyone else coming online, Ms. Pappas? No? All right, well then the public comment section is over. We'll take deliberation on this now. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion of the motion? And all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Bronenkamp, for coming online.
Great, thank you.
All right, we will move to number 7, which is 3651 Government Boulevard. This has been recommended for tentative approval.
We have no one participating. We have an email stating that they have reviewed the staff report with the applicant of the above referenced project and agree with the conditions listed in said staff report.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions or comments by any of the commissioners? If not, I'll entertain a motion on this one.
So moved.
Move to approve, subject to staff recommendations.
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All opposed. That motion passes. Thank you very much. Now let's move on to number 8. That has been recommended by the staff for tentative approval. I understand there has been quite a bit of comment on it. Ms. Pappas, you want to give us a overview?
Ms. Pappas, you're muted.
Yeah.
I've probably never sounded better. I have admitted into the meeting Trey Genwright with Jade Engineers for the applicant, as well as Evan Dial, who's with the Asheville Homeowners Association. I also need to bring to the commission's attention, you received earlier today a copy of the comments submitted via the web portal. You do have comments in the portal from Mr. Dial. Then also, because this is a Zoom meeting, I need to go through and simply reference by name all of the emails, who they were sent by. You have emails from Sherry Dial, Evan Dial, Matt Otts, Oscar Umbehagen, and I apologize if I have distorted their last name, Charity Mason, John Clark, Sabrina Cochran, Emily Foles, Jeremy and Emily Foles, James Shore, Katie Varon, Zari Alibadi, and John W. Foster. There is also attached to the end a list of people that had signed an online petition. That is towards the end of your application. Several people have signed it, but their residences are listed all over. So at this point, I will, Ms. Chairman, it's back in your court. And again, we have the applicant and one speaker in opposition that are in attendance at in this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Pappas. I do just want to clarify I have one question on the list of the signatures. Were these all signatures that you received back? This list that is about 7 pages long?
Mr. Dial, I believe, sent that. So when he speaks, I think he may be able to speak to that.
Thank you. Mr. Genwright,
Good afternoon.
thank you for coming to our meeting.
Sure, glad to be here. I've read the staff's comments. I am in agreement with those. I don't have any issues with those. Those are all pretty straightforward from our point of view. I have seen the comments that have came in. It looks like you got 16 different comments, or it's from 16 different people. 4 of them are duplicates. One of them's a non-resident, one of them's Carriage Hill, and then 10 of them, majority of them are from the Asheville subdivision. And it appears that most of those comments are related to the connection to Blue Ridge Boulevard. That is a stub out that was part of that development, and it coincides with the stub out on Old Dobbins Lane, and our project's just tying those two together. So I'm here for any comments. I'm here to address any questions, whatever I can do to help. I appreciate your time.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the commission of Mr. Genwright?
I have some questions.
Go
Can you
ahead.
hear me? Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Jenright. Good to see you again. If you will recall the meeting, the community meeting that took place the end of May when this was up for rezoning, it didn't have the subdivision at the time of the property, but there was some comments that you made about doing a traffic study that would be required because the traffic was the thing that really everyone present for the most part. Some had different concerns about drainage and whatnot, but that when will the traffic study be done?
The traffic study was completed and it has been submitted to the city. It was submitted as part of this application, so it should have been reviewed.
And was the traffic study for the entire other 2 units as well and contemplating the growth of your subdivision?
Yes, ma'am. It took into account everything.
Okay, then I guess I'll turn to the traffic engineer when that's appropriate. But that was good because that was something that I was looking forward to seeing. And I certainly understand where those residents are coming from, and that gentleman will be able to speak for his subdivision, and that's the Asheville. And there are already traffic concerns in the subdivision that you'll be entering past their entry point, which is the Carriage Hills, but it ties into 7 other subdivisions all across down to almost Gerby Road. So it's a big winding metropolitan area, urban area in there. And there are a lot of traffic concerns. So I'll be curious to see your study and I'll ask for that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions or comments by any commissioners for Mr. Jenright? Okay. Ms. Pappas, do I wait until after Mr. Dial has a chance to speak to talk to the traffic engineer? Let Mr. Dial speak first.
I think that's at the chairman's discretion.
No, I think I'm going to go ahead. If Mr. Dial is he already in the queue?
Yes, ma'am. He is in the meeting. I say that.
I am.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Mr. Dial. Thank you for coming and addressing us today.
Yeah, y'all for having me. As mentioned earlier, I guess to talk about the petition signatures, with COVID going on, it was extremely tough to try to get all of our residents together and have a proper meeting. This whole neighborhood came about right in the middle of this pandemic. So we decided that the best thing to do was a change.org online petition. So in that, of course, we're going to get people from all over the country that's involved. But a good amount of them are our neighbors in Asheville. But of course, some of them are not. But the concern is the same. As Ms. Rich mentioned just a bit ago, traffic is the number one issue. For us, we are a small neighborhood, 25 houses, 32 total lots. Of course, we have 7 undeveloped. It already is concerning with how the road is laid out. Coming into Asheville, you're going down a hill and then back up a hill, and then a very sharp curve to the left if you're staying on Blue Ridge Boulevard. There's been accidents avoided very closely a couple of times that I have witnessed and I've actually been part of. And then all of a sudden we're going to turn around and add potentially 4 to 5, maybe even more than that times the amount of traffic that we're seeing now. Being a standalone neighborhood, it's hard to understand why we would want to be included in this and attached to this mega subdivision that already is of Carriage Hills and the other 4 adjoining neighborhoods. And you're fixing to add a 6th to that. Plenty of access points to Cottage Hill and Hillcrest through those subdivisions. To us, it's a completely unnecessary connection coming onto Blue Ridge Boulevard.
You back tomorrow, or what's your plan?
Currently, we have
What time, Dave?
our kids just starting to play in the neighborhoods. They're on the streets in the afternoons, riding bikes, riding scooters. Our residents walk around the neighborhood daily. Is this going to change with this connection? It is. Is it, how much is it going to change? It's going to be hard to say. But for myself, which have 3 kids, and the other neighbors who have a multitude of kids themselves, as a parent, I don't know how safe I would feel all of a sudden with our street that we've come to know and love being a cut through for Carriage Hills in this new neighborhood, and anybody else who wants to try to get a little further down Cottage Hill or try to get a better exit from the problems that we already have on Cottage Hill. One thing, I hopefully y'all all know the area pretty well. It's a very hilly area. And one of the main concerns is right in front of Asheville subdivision. You're coming down a hill on a curve, and usually traffic backs up in the afternoon from Solid, Cody Road area. And there's been a numerous amount of accidents at that area. Now all of a sudden we're going to, like I said earlier, increase that traffic flow. Everybody in Asheville knows the perils of pulling out into oncoming traffic every day. I think somebody had mentioned in one of the letters, it's almost like a NASCAR type mentality you have to have. Some people I even know don't even hang a left in the afternoons because it's so perilous. So all of these are very, and as the president of HOA, it's been a task of mine to somewhat try to undergo this and try my best to convey our message to Councilwoman Rich and hopefully everybody on the Planning Commission. With the unnecessariness of this connection, we would like for it to be considered to be avoided. We don't see any reason for it. We don't see the need for it. And to be honest, we really don't want it. The neighborhood, we understand progress has to happen. It's going to change, the way of life for everybody on Biltmore and on Blue Ridge, who's been used to looking into the woods for the past, some 20 years. But we understand this happens and this is progress. But the road is unnecessary. And that's why we're here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dial. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Dial?
Yeah, so really, Mr. Dial, your main thing is not just obviously not against the subdivision as much as you are against having that particular connection.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The connection is the main issue. Of course, you would always want the integrity of the neighborhood staying intact, some type of barrier put around, but we know that's not going to happen. So the main issue is that connection to Blue Ridge Boulevard.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Dial by commissioners? Mr. Jenright, do you have any rebuttal comments to Mr. Dial?
Yes, I was just going to point out that connection at Blue Ridge and Cottage Hill, you got over 1,000 feet of sight distance to the left and to the right. I mean, I know it's hilly, but it's a pretty good, you can see a pretty good ways in comparison to, sight distance requirements. So I just wanted to point that out. It's not as extreme. It's probably more extreme than flat areas in the town, but when it comes to design codes, it's not totally out of line. It's over 1,000 feet in either direction.
Okay.
And have you driven that in the afternoon?
Yes, sir. I've been through that community. I'm familiar with it.
Thank you, Mr. Jenright. Any questions by any commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, just an observation. I mean,
Yes.
Mr. Dial, I think all the commissioners understand the concern and understand the change that might happen there. But as I look at that subdivision as it exists today, and I see those stubs, I don't know if the people that bought the houses in there, lots in there, had the understanding at some point in the future that was a planning goal to leave those stubs for future connection for future developments. If you can look in many of these other subdivisions, you've got that exact same scenario where you got the stub streets out there. And that's actually a planning tool where, where neighborhoods are intended to be interconnected. So I understand the perspective, but I just don't know. And I hope that him and his neighbors and the other neighbors at the time of their purchase at least had some acknowledgement of that. Because, I mean, again, that is, when I look at these subdivisions and I see those stub streets out there to other private parcels of land, that's the very reason that's done, to allow for it. And you may not, if you go there and you buy a lot in the subdivision that's undeveloped and it's all woods around you, you may have the inclination that it's going to be that way forever. But the reality is typically somebody owns that property and they have the right to go through the process by which to try to develop it. I just think that's the situation that you found yourself in today.
I have some questions of Eric. Is he still in?
Mr. Dial, I think.
Is he still in the portal?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. I know you probably watched some of the intersection change on Royal Carriage because of the accidents, and the traffic engineering department is very familiar with that. There's a lot of undeveloped property that fronts onto Cottage Hill. It's some of its own commercial, I think, but it's recommended for low density. But I think might be some commercial out. Okay, there you go. And it's not actually developed yet. So when you do a traffic, and this then now goes to Mr. The engineer about the traffic study. And I haven't seen it, which I'm looking forward to, because this also hasn't been rezoned yet. But do you contemplate looking at development that would also change the character of the area and therefore change what needed to be built at with the impact that your subdivision will then have? Is that something within the study?
Ms. Richard, you speaking to me?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
I'm sorry. So our traffic study, what we do, or what Gresham Smith had done the study for us, and they had reached out to the city and developed a set of codes. And so they're looking at the standards as required by them. I didn't do the study, so I don't want to speak to the specifics of that study, but I would imagine that if those projects out there on Cottage Hill, those commercial components and things became developed and access points for those, well, then you would have a respective study for those projects. So I don't want to speak to those items, because I think they would be standing on their own. But we would have to take into account the traffic as it stands today, and I know they took into account traffic growth. So that's part of the requirements that the city burdened this report with.
And there's no modifications at that entry point that will be part of this development and future rezoning?
No, ma'am. The summary of the report, and again, it was done by Gresham Smith. It was no impacts are required at this point. No offsite improvements are required at this point.
Ms. Rich, are you concluded with your questions?
I guess I would ask when you anticipated bringing it in for rezoning, of the property.
The rezoning, it was already been brought in. We're going to bring it to the council just after this process. We were just trying to get our stuff lined up. I think there was some concern with the rezoning and then the subdivision process going in two different steps. So we thought, in an effort to clear that up, we would stack these up in line. So that's what we're doing. Our intent is to follow with what I guess maybe some of the concerns you had they didn't come at the same time. So we're trying to do it at the same time.
So you'll show all 3 units at the rezoning is what you're saying?
Well, the rezoning is for the overall piece, and it's the master plans included in there as an exhibit, but the master plan, this project is following along with that master plan. And to be honest, the master plan showed for phase 1, 51 lots, and we're actually we're down to 49 lots just for engineering constraints. We had to drop 2 lots. So it's going to be less intense than what the actual master plan showed. You know, and to add to that, you know, this project's 30 acres. It's 49 lots on there. The code for R1 would be 7,200 square foot. These lots on average are 11, almost 12,000 square feet. The smallest lot is, you know, is 9,200 feet. The average lot, I mean, the typical lot is 9,800 square feet. So we're much larger lots than what would be allowed by the code. And so I just wanted, you know, what you're seeing here is what we kind of showed you. It's actually less intense than what we showed you for the rezoning.
By 2 lots, you say?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you have a problem with not stubbing out into Blue Ridge Boulevard? And when would the name change on the street?
Yeah, we're trying to go by what the rules are, and the rules are we have to stub to those streets. You know, if the city has different criteria, then I'm here to help you guys. So that's kind of I would defer back to the city. I would think that the stubs are there for a reason. They were stubbed out there. That was a requirement in the past for some reason, and so supporting what Nick said, I mean that's just logical for those two to tie together.
Except that the time frame is so extended from people getting used to a certain way of life and transportation. And
You know, I think if a cul-de-sac had been planned to be there, though, I think the cul-de-sac would have been built, and that would have been, you know, to the developer at that time to do that, which would have made that, you know, an isolated, smaller subdivision.
but that's what's been there. I mean, the use of it prescriptively has been for a number of years to be a one-way in and out, which in today's safety issues usually makes it a neighborhood that is, you know, it's just nice to have it if it's what you purchased. And for that many years, it's been under those conditions.
But you purchased it with again, any of the engineers or architects or planners that are part of this, or really anybody that's part of this, can look at that and see that those stubs were intended for future developments. I mean, if that subdivision was intended to have a cul-de-sac there and be an isolated, smaller subdivision, that's how it would have been designed. Clearly, either through the planning commission at that time or the developer, I don't know if maybe the developer that developed that upper subdivision owned the land below it, but clearly there was an intent for a future connection. And I understand the neighbor's perspective. I understand living in a 20 some odd lot subdivision versus being connected to one much bigger is a different scenario. But
well,
I look at the lay of
yeah, and we used to have a fire code for house construction that said if there were X number of houses, you had to have 2 entry points, but that's no longer a modern code, and particularly because of traffic issues that often creates, and you know, cross through and things that become negative for a neighborhood. And you want to make sure that your neighborhoods are stable. So
I have to imagine the scenario where if this development was before us would have come, you know, 6 months after the Asheville subdivision built, and it was just more of a logical connection, I don't think these conversations would really be valid, because that's typically how it happens. There's typically not a 20, 25-year delay between future phases of subdivisions. But when I see the stub streets, I tend to believe that's what they were there for the future development of this land. And that be it a, you know, the number of lots proposed, or I mean, it very well could have been a single lot back there.
Right. And
all the engineer and applicant can do is play by the rules that are presented to them, and I believe that's what they're doing.
Ms. Rich and Mr. Amberger, I'm going to ask if anybody has any further questions of either Mr. Jenright or Mr. Dial.
I have one more of Mr. Jenright. When was the study conducted? Because we've been on a kind of a limited exposure to each other. Schools have been shut down. Businesses were shut down. There wasn't really a good blush of a traffic count. So I would be very curious to know about the date.
The study is dated April 2020. So as far as the traffic,
April,
count,
okay.
I don't have that information in front of me of when those counts were actually pulled. If those were counts that were grabbed from the city's system, or if those counts were actually counts that wasn't ran. Again, that was coordinated with the city's traffic staff.
Oh, I see. So you don't know whether that was data that went back or whether it was live date for data. Is
I
what
could
you're
get
saying.
that information for you, but I don't have it readily available in front of me.
I think that's very, very important for our traffic impact.
It's referenced in the full study. I just didn't print the whole study off for this meeting. I didn't. The copy the city has all the backup data. So I'll see if I can
Ms.
find it.
Rich, looking at the backup information, the traffic counts were dated March 17th. That was the Tuesday before the shutdown, I believe, maybe that week, later that week.
One day of traffic study, you don't take a week's worth of traffic to see whether it picks up on weekends or, it's one day to get traffic counts?
That's pretty typical. You look at an average day, and a Tuesday in the middle of the week is pretty average, because you really, for a subdivision, you want to get the peak hour for going and coming to work and school and all that.
Okay. All right. Well, I do think the date's very important. I really do, because I'm not sure when schools actually shut down, when business started shutting. And, if it was the 17th or whether it was the 15th, it could make a very big difference. And a lot of people did initiatives even before they were forced to do it, as far as mandated closures. But again, this is still a time that is rather unusual. And I didn't realize that a traffic study would just be a one-day event. I don't know why. I just think they usually would mean longer to really get a sense of the travel of the roadway. Okay.
Okay. If nobody has any further questions of Mr. Jenright or Mr. Dahl, I think we can excuse them at this point and thank them for attending and move into the deliberation phase on this. Is that good with you, Ms. Pappas?
Working on it.
Okay. Did you hear what I said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dahl, and thank you, Mr. Jenright, for attending.
Okay. They're in the waiting room.
Okay, thank you. Let's move into the deliberation phase on this one.
So,
Can I say something, Liv?
Yes.
Like always, I'm not for or against an application, but since this issue with the curb cut has been heavily discussed, I just want to kind of give my 2 cents worth. When I was on the planning commission starting back in '94, that was in the middle of all these West Mobile subdivisions being developed, being platted. And at that point in time, it was good planning to have these stub outs for one, accessibility, and two, to make sure that there were no landlocked parcels behind us or behind that particular parcel. Planning standards change, development changes. Just because the stub out's there doesn't mean we have to follow it. I think you need to look at the proposal, what other curb cuts, what other access they have, the safety involved, and see if it's a reasonable request, a reasonable thing to do. But just because it's there doesn't mean we have to do it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
Ms. Chair, Madam Chairman, I have a couple things that I'd like to say as well.
Okay.
I believe that the March 17th date is something we might want to take a closer look, because although the governor and the state health officer issued, I think it was a proclamation, I'm trying to look it up right now. They issued a proclamation or an order on the 27th that shut down a lot of businesses. I don't think that was the first executive action that the state took, and there might have been a lot of people at home even on March 17th. So, I mean, it might be worth, I'm not saying that the traffic study is wrong, but I think it would be good to look at that because it might have been a little bit, but I think if I remember correctly, it was March 14th or 12th or something like that. We had our first case and things moved pretty quickly after that to informal shutdown, if not necessarily the formalized shutdown. So I think Councilor Rich is probably right in questioning that. So I think it'd be good if Mary Beth, if we could take a hard look at it and maybe reassess. I mean, I'm not trying to make more work, but it's not exactly. I think we had a state health order on the 18th as well. So I mean, there's just a lot of pieces that could have informally affected it, and then to Doug's point, just because there was a stub out there doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a connection. If there's not a traffic issue created by the subdivision, then I'm not really going to stand in the way of it. But if we don't know that it's going to cause an issue or not, because we have a single, this single day is kind of at a weird time. March is widely considered to be the peak of the pandemic for a lot of Alabamians. So it's just worth thinking about that.
Ms. Bergen, is there any way we can, just from available city data, can you go back any further than that, or would we have to have an additional study done of a day now that I know public schools are not back in session. There's a public school back up in that area. Is there any way we can get additional data that might not be viewed?
We have 24-hour or weekly, a couple days worth of data at different points throughout the area. I would have to look exactly at where it is on Cottage Hill specifically, or Hillcrest. We try to count between major roadway segments. So we may have a count close by that would give us some historical information about the daily traffic on Cottage Hill, but the study itself was looking at turning movement volume specifically. And that is what kind of information they need to run the warrants for the right turn lane. So if we were going to do another study now, the historical information would only help us to put some markup, you could say, on the traffic to try and to get a prediction. But again, a prediction now on counts now wouldn't be any better than the counts that are in the study at this point. It's not all just a guess.
Was the study that was done, did it produce results that required any type of offsite improvements on Cottage Hill?
No, it did not. It looked like the study was only reviewing turn lane warrants for a right turn lane, because everywhere on Cottage Hill and Hillcrest there is left turn access. So the study was looking specifically at right turn lanes. Looking at the generation, even if you just assumed a generation for the Asheville subdivision with the 25 homes in it, and the traffic that it estimated was going out that subdivision, the number of the volume of turns that would be going right into the subdivision was substantially low, and it would not warrant, even if we did another count. All you're doing is updating the through traffic on Cottage Hill. We know that's heavy. That volume is going to warrant a right turn lane any day, but it's the actual right turns that are critical. And I don't know that they would have gotten much better data with a different day or doing it again.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Anderson.
So I just sent a link from the Alabama Department of Public Health. The day before, the governor issued guidance regarding public gatherings and things like that. So I think it could have had an impact. But with that being said, I was just listening to Mary Beth. If she doesn't think that it would warrant another look at it, even if we were to do it again, I get that. I just wanted to put that on the radar.
Here's another question for the traffic engineer, if I may.
Please.
Thank you. Was there any kind of counts within the subdivision of Carriage Hills and Autumn Ridge at all, as far as speeds and number of cars that are there, and what the impact of having additional ones would do if they came out to, say, Royal Carriage or out to Hillcrest?
No, this study only looked at 4 of the connections, 2 to Cottage Hill and 2 to Hillcrest, and estimated the traffic exiting the neighborhood as a whole and where it would be distributed.
And that was for the whole subdivision, or just strictly for this unit 1?
It was for all 3, and they phased it over the 3 years or so that it would take to open and construct all 3 separate phases of development.
Okay.
And
I think the challenge is if the subdivision were built today, would people go out Old Dobbin Drive or would they go out the Blue Ridge? And the reality is you just don't know. It depends on what their destination is.
And
That's
it's
true.
Every house is located in the new neighborhood.
Right, right. And so from my perspective, I mean, it's better to have 2 points of ingress and egress than just the one. I mean, I know if the fire code doesn't require it anymore, it still makes good sense. And there was a reason it was in there at one point in time to have that. So, I mean, and I totally get and understand the residents' concern that they've effectively lived in a 25, 26 block subdivision that probably has its own unique character around it. But there's also private land that has the right to be developed around it, and that change.
right, and they can come in on Dobbins and on what is that other one? The Harness Way.
Well, I know we didn't have anybody from Old Dobbin here at the meeting speaking today, but I would suspect they would have the same concerns that Blue Ridge does. I mean, it's just.
But they got the letter, didn't they get the letter? So why aren't they down here to say they're concerned? They were concerned with internal traffic. They're already very large, and they already have some traffic calming. Some want more in there, but if all those people that abut this got the letter, I haven't seen the file, but I'm going to assume they got the letter. So maybe they understand that they're part of the whole of this, because it's going to be called Old Dobbins Drive. I'm assuming the names are going to stay the same. So there is the egress and ingress in there.
Yes, but I guess, I mean, the question is, do you want to put all the traffic on one neighborhood, or do you want to take the traffic and split it up and allow them to go to 2? I mean, I get there's not a right answer or a wrong answer, but that's effectively what you would be doing if we don't allow that other connection. Then you're effectively.
But you're bringing an entire subdivision up towards an area that has 25 homes and has been self-contained for the last 25 years or 30 years, whenever it started getting developed.
There might not be a single person that makes that route every day. I mean, it's impossible to know what direction somebody's going to go. Everybody that builds these new houses, they may live and work off Rangeline Road, so they may all go through the neighborhood. I mean, that's just an impossible scenario for us to consider.
I guess I project myself into people's concerns, and that certainly I would understand having an environment and since we're not forced to do it.
Yeah.
And again, if everyone who's already abutting and did not contact and they got the letter, they could have also written, petitioned, but they obviously are not. You're not hearing, this planning commission did not hear from them. So
in your city councilor role, you'll have to respond to your constituency that doesn't understand why you tied just to one neighborhood when you had the opportunity to tie it to
because one is already there's already management. I mean, there needs to be more management, but it is a continuation of their platform, this Old Dobbins Drive and Harness Way.
And I would counter that with management is providing redundancy. Redundancy is the best management tool to let people go and to spread the traffic load out over a larger network of roads. I mean, again, it's some.
Well, when you get the commercialization up on Cottage Hill, which will eventually happen, we hope it does. I guess they could stay single family up there. But when that comes in, all that commercialization will be coming through, because that's how that works. And if there's a way to prevent that, I think that would be in everyone's, at the end of the day, long-term best interest.
We'll have to agree to disagree.
Are there any further comments, questions? Mr. Anderson, Mr. Matt Anderson, with your comment on the traffic study, are you considering proposing a holdover, or do I have a motion from someone on this application?
I was not contemplating a holdover unless the traffic engineer was to say that it would be useful, but it didn't sound like it would actually yield us anything.
I just was trying to clarify where you were going with that. Or is there any further comment on this? Do I have a motion on this?
I'll make a motion to approve subject to staff recommendation.
Second.
I would like to make an amendment to their recommendation, and that it not open into the Blue Ridge Boulevard.
I won't entertain that amendment to my motion.
Well, maybe someone else will second that.
Do I have a second on that amendment?
Second on which amendment? On Nick's amendment or Beth's amendment?
Mr. Amberger made a motion. Ms. Rich was seconded. Ms. Rich made an amendment to not connect Blue Ridge Drive or Blue Ridge, whatever it is.
Boulevard.
Yeah, I don't change my second. I still second Nick's.
Okay. Do I have a second for the amendment? Mr. Anderson, Mr. Doug Anderson, what does an amendment need to be seconded, or do we vote on the amendment and then?
We need it's Nick's motion and he wants to keep it that way. So
Okay.
without a second to the amendment, we're voting on Nick's motion because it's been properly seconded.
Okay. Mr. Amberger's motion has been made and it has been properly seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Are the Ms.
Opposed.
Ms. Rich is opposed. I want to make sure there wasn't anybody else opposed and I missed them. Were there any other no's? That motion passes. Okay. Thank you. Let's move on to number 9, which is 5212 and 5240 Willis Road. It is a PUD application which has been recommended for approval, and they have submitted findings of fact.
Yes, and I have admitted Jerry Bird into the meeting. He's available to answer questions.
Yes, I'm here. Margaret, we're in agreement with the recommendations if anybody has questions.
Margaret, whatever wasn't there a connector road never got built somewhere between the road and the Willis Road?
Nick, that has.
Wait a minute.
Go ahead, Jerry.
No, repeat that question.
I think Mr. Bird had some feedback on his end. Maybe he's got the live stream. Okay, Mr. Bird.
Yes.
Mr. Amberger asked you a question about a connector road.
Oh, are you talking about the one right where Willis Road makes that 90 degrees? That connector road did get constructed. And it's my understanding that it was in the process of being accepted by the city. I believe the subdivision showing that connector was up maybe a month ago or 6 weeks ago before the planning commission.
they had to withdraw, I do anticipate them coming back, and that is, Nick.
Yeah, so these applications aren't connected. I'm sorry, I was maybe tying this application.
It's very, very close,
Yeah,
but
very close.
they are not associated.
Okay, very good. Just-
And, okay, and just for clarification, I've also admitted Adam Metcalf, he's the applicant. I hope you have no questions for him because he appears to be driving.
No, I pulled over.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Metcalf? All right. Ms. Pappas, is there anyone here in opposition to this?
No,
Okay.
no, ma'am, there is not, and nor did we receive any correspondence in opposition.
Does anyone have any further questions or comments for either Mr. Metcalf or Mr. Byrd? Well, then we will close the public comment section and move into the deliberation session of this. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Metcalf and Mr. Byrd, for coming.
Thank you so much.
All right. Ms. Pappas, did you have any comments on this at all?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments by the commissioner?
Where is the lot line between lot 2 and lot 3?
What was the question, Nick?
The lot line, I see lot 2 and I see lot 3, but I don't see a line that distinguishes the two.
The line is essentially along the proposed concrete area.
Okay, gotcha.
They're going to be using the existing detention facility, which they have checked to make sure it's sized adequately.
So they'll share in the retention pond?
Yes.
Okay, I guess will we have a way to make sure they have some sort of maintenance covenant between the two that where they both share in the ownership and maintenance of that? That may be a question for Mr. Anderson, Mr. Doug Anderson. I mean, typically the retention ponds are owned by one individual lot unless it's part of an association of some sort. Don't have a problem with it, but I just think they probably need to have something where it's clear who has the maintenance responsibility or that it's a shared maintenance responsibility.
Yeah, it's, if they have different owners, we would want something, at least a condition that it is the owner's responsibility to maintain the on-site retention pond.
Yeah, I guess the concern would be if one of the lots sold, and then somebody's got, they presumably they would both have a shared responsibility in it, but if it's not in a covenant or legal document or something somewhere, or note on a plat, maybe that might be an appropriate place to do it.
Yeah, certainly a note on the plat, since we can't force them to do a deed restriction or restrictive covenants, but a note on the plat that is conditioned that the owners maintain it.
Do we have to put that as an additional number under the conditions?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is a PUD, so there's no plat, just a site plan.
It's a subdivision too, isn't it? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at number.
They are existing legal lots of record.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
But so it is appropriate if we would ask on the lot 3 have a shared responsibility of maintaining the existing detention pond?
Nick, there is no subplat. It's existing lots of record, but Doug, this is a question for you. Could it be a condition of the PUD?
Yeah.
That there be something recorded that requires shared responsibility between the owners of lots 2 and 3 for that detention
If it's a
pond?
condition of the PUD, they're required to do it, but as far as putting any future purchaser of the lot on notice, yeah, it would be a good idea to record something, and yes, we could put that in a we could have a condition that requires them to put that on record, yeah.
Well, I
We've never done
realize,
that before, but I think we can do that.
well, that I brought it up because you're correct. We haven't, to my recollection, done that before, but typically we have the subdivision plat, which would alert the future owners. In this
Right.
case, we wouldn't.
We just my office has ran into several situations where, you know, most of the time it's a bigger association or like maybe a commercial development or a residential subdivision where people have quit maintaining the retention ponds. And when that pond quits working, it's just a link in the chain that affects somebody else downstream. And so, you know, just trying to make sure there's clear ownership and maintenance responsibility is very important, because these ponds typically, you know, wherever this thing is draining to, it's draining downstream or it's upstream of somebody else. And if it quits working, you know, then we start having we have absentee owners, which I don't think we got that case here, but what we do, then we have the challenge of getting them to come in and maintain it. So clear ownership of maintenance responsibility of these ponds is just very, very important from the engineering office's perspective.
Yeah, and if we just make a condition that it's the owner's responsibility, or owner is required to record a document in probate court setting forth the responsibilities of the maintenance of the detention pond.
And for everybody's sake, that's very much in line with what even the new developments are required to do. Some of our ADM requirements require maintenance covenants that could be recorded. So that's very much in keeping with what, you know, if this were a new development, that would be something they'd have to do to get their final CO for the site.
Are there any further questions or comments by any of the commissioners? Do I have a motion on number 9, PUD? Do we have to have findings of fact?
Move to approve adopting findings of facts A through E and adding a condition to the PUD regarding maintenance of the detention pond.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion on this motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I'm sorry, that motion passes. Thank you. Let's move on to number 10. It is an application for a re-subdivision and a PUD. It has been recommended for a holdover to September 17th. Ms. Pappas, do we have the applicant or anyone here joining us?
I'm going to let Bert speak to it because he's been able to correspond with them.
Okay.
Neither the seller nor the purchaser indicated that they had any desire to speak. The seller said that they would be available if there were any questions.
Okay.
He's not in the meeting.
Okay.
Do you have the information you could put up on our screens with the site plan?
Oh, yeah, hold on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right. Does anyone have any questions, if anybody from the city on this one? Since it has been recommended for a holdover, I'm going to make that motion. That'd be held over to September the 17th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. All right, Ms. Pappas, do we have any further business?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Thank you very much. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.